folks. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alice Chance and I am Head of Student Operations over at Command Shift. Got a really exciting session for you this afternoon. We're going to be talking with Charlie. Charlie's a software engineer at ITV. He's come through a bootcamp route himself. He's just going to be telling you all about his experience and what it's like actually to be a developer once you've graduated from bootcamp. We will be doing a Q&A, so feel free to ask questions during, and then we'll go through all of those at the end. But do get involved as much as possible. And I will hand over to you, Charlie. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alice. Yeah, hey, everyone. As the screen and the slide says, my name's Charlie Say. You might see on these screens a little bit that they go from one color quite bright to another. I'm trying out a new presentation software today. And it apparently does all the design features for you. So if it hurts your eyes a little bit, I apologize, but I'm sure the content is fantastic and will be great for everyone watching. So yeah, my name's Charlie Say. I'll tell you about myself really quickly in 30 seconds and why I'm any form of relevance right now and what I'm going to talk about. So I've been a developer for about 6 years. I started off at Auto Trader, which is a car marketplace in the UK, as an apprentice software developer. Ironically, I did a boot camp as one of them that was run by Joe, who runs Command Shift. Hence how I know this loose connection. He ran one of the boot camps for me. After about a year and a half of that, I became a junior software developer. And at that point, I was working more in a full stack role rather than a back end role. So working on both front end and back end technologies. Then COVID hit. And during COVID, like most people, I thought it was quite a time for a switch. So I switched to Money Supermarket, who is a price comparison website, to work in the energy world. And then obviously, as many people know, the energy world went kaboom. And I didn't lose my job or anything like that, but it was just a good time to move on because of how the business was changing towards ITV, which is where I currently am right now and working inside the commercial technology side. So if you're on ITVX or watching ITV as a channel right now, not hopefully not right now, because then that means you're not watching this after this if you're watching ITV, obviously. And you get an advert shoved in your face. That's me. That's my team. We've decided what advert to throw in there. So we base off people's data and give tailored adverts and all that type of stuff. So that's really why I think you should listen to me over the next 20, 30 minutes. And here's a really, really fun fact, all right? I've been a developer for 2,876,040 minutes. Now, that's technically from September like the 3rd in 2016 or something till this morning. Now, that sounds like a big number, and I've definitely inflated it. It makes it sound more official than I actually am, but I'm not. So straight up, let me just be honest about this. There's no funny business here. So before I go into what I'm about to tell you and explain today about being a life developer, I have no course to sell you. I am not representing ITV. I'm not representing Mongo, even though I've got a Mongo jumper on. I just like their jumper. I'm not representing my own company. Nothing like that. I'm truly here because I'm passionate about you guys who are developers going through a bootcamp getting a great head start in their career because the industry is expanding and it's a very exciting time to be in it. I think you've made a cracking choice. You can make a real impact, and the demand for software engineers is high and it's expected to continue growing. Before I moved to this job of ITV, I think in Manchester, so I'm based in Manchester, for every developer that is out there, there were 3 jobs at the time, which is an insane stat. I don't really know what other industries that there's such a high, ratio in that scenario. And specifically within the UK, the Digital Skills Index, which is like a UK government report, are reporting in 2019 that there's 60,000 job openings for software engineers that are short of qualified candidates. So you have made a cracking choice. You've got autonomy in what you do. You're building stuff. You've got intellectual challenge. You've got flexible work. The pay is great, and the most important one is you get to change the world. You're able to make stuff that people use day to day, even if it seems small, even if it seems negligible, something like that. You are making something that's genuinely going to change the world. Whether that be one person, you've technically changed the world at that point. So congratulations on being in a boot camp. Honestly, first off, that's the first thing I'm going to say. Congratulations on being in a boot camp and being above 99% of the world in your knowledge of programming. Props to you. So, with that kind of over, what are we going to talk about today? What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the life of a developer. So, my day to day currently as a further on professional, mid level, very, very low level senior working from home. Something called Imposter Syndrome, as you see the ghost thing. It makes you think spooky. Ooh. But it's a real thing in the software industry. And then we'll round it off with some top tips at interviewing, which I think are quite needed because of various things that I'll get into later on in the presentation. So, first, the day of a developer. Right now, some days it looks like the one on the left. That's tomorrow for me. That's my Friday. In fact, that's actually slightly outdated, the one on the left. I've got a few more meetings now in the afternoon, but involves 6-7 meetings. And there's some days it's the one on the right. Some people will have you believe online that maybe you're just non-stop meetings or non-stop. That's not true. It really varies day to day in this programmer's life. But today, specifically, I'm going to take my day as of yesterday. So I wrote this presentation part yesterday, and this is my day on a typical day. Simple as. Remember, I'm 7 years into this point, so everyone's days will look slightly different at different levels. A seniors and a tech leads might look different to a junior apprentice, will look different to a mid-level, which is what I am. So first up, and anyone that doesn't have tea or coffee, I'm sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. I have to start my day with a coffee. I'm a coffee snob. So I wake up at like 8 o'clock, have a coffee. I don't do, you see some things online, 6 a.m. I wake up and meditate and go to the gym, and you do what you do. But I wake up at 8 o'clock with a coffee for my 9 a.m. meeting, which is a stand up. Now, I'm not entirely sure the exposure you guys maybe have got of what a stand up is. Stand up, you might have heard the word agile methodology. Stand up is something in the agile methodology world in which you have a meeting at 9 a.m. to kind of give a status update of what's happened on the day before. So I would say something like, what did I work on yesterday? I could say in this scenario, you could kind of see at the bottom of the page, I've cropped it off for some reason, where it's slightly highlighted, it says upgrade dependencies, LA rules front end. That was the story I would have done. So I'd say something like, I was working on this story yesterday. I got halfway through it, and then I hit a bug when I upgraded a dependency. The whole app crashed. That's what I'm going to continue working on for the rest of the day today. I have no blockers. If anyone wants to pair, I'm free. That's it. That's all stand up is. Sometimes it could be 15 minutes, sometimes it can be 30, and then sometimes, like yesterday, it could be 2 hours long. But those 2 hour ones are very, very rarely a thing. And that's because there was a incident or something like that. I can't really remember. I was quite a little bit ill. Anyway, so once I've done my once I've done my stand up for the day, I will get out a standard to-do list. I don't have a fancy app for it. I have a pen and paper beside me on my desk, which just says, what do I need to do today? So I spend 5-10 minutes doing that. Do I need to reply to emails today? Do I need to do this story today? Do I need to join some meetings today? Or am I going to code and test and do all this stuff all day? So in this day, we're going to pretend it's a code day, and I'll pick up a ticket. Now, again, for terminology, a ticket is also commonly known as a story in the agile world, which is just really pretty simply a task, if you're aware of that. And this is what it would look like, right? So the one I was talking about earlier, upgrade dependencies, LA rules, front end. So as you can see, it's description written by someone else. It says, as a third line support engineer, I want to have up-to-date dependencies on the applications I work on, so I can count on the most recent security patches, bug fixes, and da-da-da-da-da. Great. It's got a bunch of acceptance criteria as well. So someone else has written this. It's not me. I wouldn't pick it up if I wouldn't pick up my own story I've written, because it's not a conflict of interest. It's just I can then just tailor the story to myself, and I'm not really doing what's being asked of me. So in this scenario, the acceptance criteria, I've got research and upgrade each dependency, make sure it's available in one environment, and test the app. Enable something called Dependabot, which is a GitHub app that they provide. I'm not sure if it's enterprise. I don't know. and configure the Dependabot YAML file, which is a way config files are done. That's it, right? That's in essence the story. It's just what to do and some acceptance criteria. Some companies have very more in depth, but at ITV, where I currently am, it's this. And generally speaking, at Auto Trader and Money Supermarket before, my previous companies, they've probably been at the same level of detail. I've not had exposure to something else like that. Or the only other crack, and I've not got a screenshot for this, is it can just be a bug. Now, bugs, I'm sure you've heard of them. It was the first ever bug was because an actual physical bug was in a computer system, and that's why it was called a bug, like a physical bug. I don't have a picture of it, but it's somewhere online if you want to go look at that at some point. But if it's a bug, it can literally be a one-liner saying something like, "App is broken in production, please fix," and that's all we know. The computer engineer, the software engineer side, is going to figure that out. So that's the story. I'll be working on that until lunchtime. But let's say I finish here, right? And this is the pull request. I'll raise up a pull request. And for example, this one, slightly different story, but it's still the same gist of upgrading dependencies and adding this Dependabot thing. Now, if you see here, it will look very deceiving, and it looks as if I've added 10,000 lines and 7,000 deletions. That's not true. That's all automated. I probably changed about 15 lines here. It just makes you look a lot better than when you don't, to be honest. Anyway, so I'll raise a pull request and then keep going until noon, right? That's it. Simple as. I'll code and learn until lunch. No meetings. Great. It's fantastic. I get to do what I love doing till lunchtime. Personally, I go to the lunch and then go to the gym. I take a slightly longer lunch because of flexible working, because I work from home. If that's not the case, sometimes I'll take 30 minutes and, finish earlier. But really, my boss and my team are quite flexible and pretty flexible. And we're lucky to be in an industry where we can have that flexibility. Again, you've made a great choice being in this industry. But there's that flexible point. So I'll do that for an hour and a half or so. And I'll come back from lunch and let's again, typical day yesterday. I've got a meeting all of a sudden with the alarm bells going. Damn, I've got a meeting. But as a fairly autonomous team in ITV, we have this meeting called Refinement. Now, this looks into the backlog of work, so the to-do list of work, essentially. Now, I know this is blurred out, which is probably a bit annoying for context. I'm not quite sure what I can show. So this is basically a bunch of those stories that I mentioned earlier. Now, what you can see is that, let me skip down 2 slides. You can see on the arrow, you see the one that the bubbles some have numbers in and some have dashes in. Now, the ones with the dashes have not been refined to be on quote. The ones with numbers in have been refined. Simple as. That's all it is. So we go through those stories as much as we can, as many of those stories in an hour and many of those tasks an hour as a team, and do something called story pointing. Now, story pointing is subjective. I'm not going to go into it. It's per team, per company, and how you feel about it. It's how much effort you think a story will take or a task will take. That's it. So I'll have a refinement meeting for an hour. And now it's highlighted because the refinement meeting is done. And guess what? After this, for Life of Developer? Oh, I'll go back to coding for the rest of the day. I'll continue to work on the story in the ticket that was in progress. I may pair with someone over Slack, Google, whatever. And we may pair in program. And in some cases, we might even mob program. Mob programming is where you get a bunch of people in the call rather than just a pair of people and go ham at a bit of work. That's it. I'll code for the rest of the day. I'll sit there, do a bit of code. This is Java code. That's it. Yep, that's it. Simple. Java code. That's it for the rest of the day. That is the life of a developer. What I was trying to insinuate earlier is a lot of stuff you might see online and in influencer world and TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff is that, I'd meeting that. I coded for 7 hours straight without taking my eyes off the screen. It's just not realistic, right? What's being realistic is doing what you love. You're doing something you love every day. I'm not surgically glued to my screen. I take breaks. I go walk my dog, which I don't have. I wish I could walk a dog. I go to the gym. I eat. I meal prep. I do everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, life of developer. We have such a flexible job. So that's it. That's a life of developer. Now, moving on to the next thing we said earlier, we're going to cover life of developer, the imposter syndrome, and tips for interviewing. I'm going to come on to imposter syndrome now. Now, this can seem like a quite a scary word, but it's something super close to my heart, and it's something I really struggle with as a junior engineer specifically. I still struggle with it now. Ironically, it's not something that goes away. And if you're watching and you're going to take anything away from this, right? I'd perk your ears up for this bit as junior developers. Genuinely, you could ignore the life of the developer, the top tips for interviewing. I don't, whatever. If there's something you're going to listen to, this is the bit to listen to, right? So, imposter syndrome is, if for those that don't know, is a common feeling amongst many people, not just software engineers, but it's quite heightened in the software engineer world. It's a feeling of inadequacy and self doubt that can rise despite evidence of you having success in the scenario. In the case of software engineers, this is kind of exacerbated by the constantly evolving nature of the field, as well as the high standards that sometimes can be placed upon software engineers, plus the the mix of the technical nature of the work, the fact we're looking at code all day can contribute to these feelings of imposter syndrome. You feel like a fraud. You feel like you're going to get exposed. And some real obvious symptoms is that you're feeling like you don't fit your job when you get into a job. Obviously, once you finish your boot camp, you're struggling to recognize the value of your work. It's quite a big one. You're constantly self-doubting and fear of being exposed as a fraud. You're scared of communicating with other developers is quite a big one as well, because it will uncover gaps in your knowledge. And then last but not least, you kind of doubt that programming is the right career choice for you. Now, personally, I've experienced all of that. Ironically, right, here's the thing. I'm 7 years into this industry, and you guys are junior developers, okay? Last night, I looked at the Command Shift YouTube page where there was a YouTube video of the projects that you guys had made at the end of your cohort, or the previous cohort maybe, something called Sound Clone, where it was basically Spotify on a web, and they could play music and all this stuff. I'm 7 years in. I have no idea how to do that. I felt imposter syndrome last night. I'm like, there's junior developers here, you guys, who are out coding me already. I've been doing it for 7 years. That's imposter syndrome in a nutshell. Like, how are they going to find? Is ITV going to find me out? Am I going to get fired? It sucks, right? Imposter syndrome is crap, right? That's one. And here's another example, right? Here's a pull request I raised 2 weeks ago. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, there's 16 commits there. So I've done 16 separate commits at ITV in my professional work environment where it's broke in a row for 3 days straight. there was no let up. I could tell you I was slowly losing my mind, and I didn't want to ask for help, especially after the first, after 24 hours. You're like, I was 8 commits in and nothing was working. I was like, I can't expose myself like this. I can't. What if someone sees me for a fraud? Do you know what? It happens to everyone, right? Let me be real with you. You can overcome imposter syndrome, right? And the way you do that, right? I'm not an expert in this, by the way. These are just some kind of tips of how to overcome it, especially as junior developers. Instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, reframe your thinking and think, hey, I'm not good enough. Nah, I'm learning and I'm growing. Simple, like word replacement almost, or I'm doing the best I can rather than I'm not good enough. Secondly, thing to consider is recognize that imposter syndrome is very common, not just in the software world, but in the world at large. It's not just you who feels it. Honestly, you may feel out your depth, but it's not just you. And you're probably not out of your depth as well. You're just thinking that you are, and you're in your head about it. Thirdly, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself, right? When you make mistakes or feel unsure, remember that everyone makes mistakes in this field. I'm going to say it. When I was at Money Supermarket, I once put something out into production that turned off all of our energy quotes for 2 hours. So for 2 hours, we lost 2 hours worth of money. That was my fault. Practice self-compassion. It's okay to make mistakes. It really is. Fourth, write down your achievements. no matter how small you think they are. Honestly, the fact you can maybe go to console.log on JavaScript and do hello world, that is an achievement in itself. Honestly, your first hello world page, your first app, it's all an achievement. And remind yourself, I've done this in the past, I will do it again. I can get stuff done. And fifth, and this is proper important in this world, get a mentor. Now, it may be someone of your command shift lecturers, or maybe someone external that you've met at work, someone on Twitter. I don't know. There's probably some service somewhere that allows you to hook up with to match yourself to mentors, and you can mentor each other. That might be a thing. I don't actually know. But what's important more than anything in all of this is the top. Your GitHub. This is the GitHub repository. I'm assuming GitHub is known what it is. So the top one is what, you know, in a influencer world has you believe you have to be successful at as being a software developer. You have to have 50 commits a day. You have to have 100 commits a day. It's just not true. The bottom one is mine over the last year. Yeah, sure, there's been some days where I've done 10, but those 10 are the 18 commits of the one before that I failed at. You know, I had the 18 failing commits. That it's not real, okay? Overcoming imposter syndrome is a big thing, right? And you'll deal with it daily. I'm not an expert, right? But there are some resources out there that are flipping class, right? Specifically. Now I'm going to call out 2 ones here. Again, I'm not an expert. And if you're listening, this is the I asked you to listen to. Great. Now listen to this double more so, okay? The first one that was literally just released this morning is a guy called Stephen Bartlett, who's a CEO at he sold one of his, he's on Dragon's Den in the BBC. He does Diary of a CEO, and he just released a episode this morning with someone called Sharo Izard. And she's a mental health advocate, and she talks about imposter syndrome and stuff like that. It was a great one to listen to very, very quickly this morning. But engineer specific one, it's the one that's on the screen right now. Syntax FM is a podcast, and there's an episode specifically. If people are interested, I can put it in the YouTube chat later at the end of this. But it's an engineer specific one called Mental Health and Development by Dr. Court Talinsky, who is the wife of one of the podcast hosts. And she specifically talks about imposter syndrome for a good 10 minutes in this podcast. And by goodness, is it great. So that I really should recommend them. I'll put them in the chat afterwards as well, or I'm sure Alice can get it out to you guys. So that's that for imposter syndrome, right? To take the off this. That's it for imposter syndrome. It's okay to struggle with it. Everyone does. Even my boss does. Without exposing him. I hope he never sees. Please don't see this. Anyway, moving on swiftly. The third thing we were going to talk about is interviewing. Okay. Now, interviewing in the UK is slightly different to what you see sometimes online. If you type in Google junior software interview tips, I think you might be bombarded with American tips. Now, the American industry is completely different to, well, it's the same that it's software engineering, but the way they work out there is completely different. Especially because they've got something called FANG versus non-FANG type of stuff. You know, you got FANG, if you're not aware, is an old acronym for Facebook. Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Now, interviewing at them is very hard, and as someone who's gone through that process, there's loads of online resource catered to that. If you get an interview with them, great, good on you. Go look at that. I'm not talking about those ones. The interview tips I'm going to give you right now are for non-FANG, so literally every other company in the world based in the UK. That's specifically what I'm going to talk about right now. So as a junior dev, you get into your interview. You've got your interview prep. You've got your interview booked in. You're like, yes. Crap, what do I do now? First thing is first. Research your company. I know it's like the number one tip in interviewing, period. But before going into the interview, research the company, the role you're applying for. Look at their website, read news articles. They might have tech blog posts already. Check out their social media profiles. Understanding the company's values and culture, especially as a tech person, will help you tailor your answers to demonstrate why you're a good fit. Now, there's loads of places you can research this type of stuff. So Google, simple. But my two main ones, Glassdoor, I know you know about it, and then a not so as much known one is pretty new, but it's very transparent. It's something called levels.fyi. That is the domain itself. So levels, levels.fyi. And if you go on that, there's a bunch of companies, questions, salary structures, bonuses, benefits, questions and answers, all this type of stuff on certain companies. It's relatively new, but it's very transparent. So honestly, research the company, figure out what you're applying for, figure out what they're gonna want to see in you. Secondly, goes without saying, know your basics. At a junior level, you have to have the fundamentals down to a T. You do, even at a junior level. Because for those of you that drive in the UK, or have driven for a few years, you know that passing your driving test and learning to drive are two completely separate things. Sometimes the interview can be like that. They're asking you to learn fundamentals, right? Learn them. And what I mean by that is learn your arrays, learn your some sorting algorithms. I don't know. Like, know your basics. It's really, really, what is HTML? Who made it? How do you initialize an empty HTML tag? Rather than actual, like, coding the HTML, how do you initialize a HTML file? Simple. Know your basics. They may not ask you it, but one, it'll give you a really good fundamental. But two, if you then do ask you, you sound like a right good person because you know your basics. Simple as. Third one, obviously, problem solving. 99% of companies and interviewers, right? Ironically, it sounds like an oxymoron to the above, but 99% of them are not interested in flashy, algorithms. They're not. What they're interested in is the way you approach work. They're interested in how you problem solve. They're not interested in how quickly you could do it. They're not interested in how, flashy your algorithm is and that breaks the speed of light. They're interested in how you go about a problem. Programming at its core is problem solving. They want to see that, not the fact you can make the flashiest, quickest thing. Honestly, prepare your mind for problem solving, and you're doing that by doing a bootcamp course. By the way, the whole bootcamp course is problem solving. You've got something to make it. That's problem solving in a nutshell. Now, this one's a bit more before, but make sure your GitHub and your Twitter or your personal portfolio is up to date. Ironically, it sounds a bit of an oxymoron to the one above saying don't be flashy. But this part's not the interview. Make projects. Show that you can actually do it. It's all well and good saying, I know JavaScript, I know HTML, I know CSS, I know Java, I know Fibonacci, I don't know. It's all well and good saying you know it. Show you know it. Make an app about the Fibonacci sequence using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and send it in with your application. Do you know what I said earlier? I don't have anything to peddle. I do have one thing to promote. Almost is this specifically, right? I made a resource a few months ago called 100projects.dev. That's the domain, 100projects.dev. If you get stuck on what project or side project to build next to upskill yourself, go to this website. There is beginner, intermediate, expert, JavaScript, TypeScript, 5 games, full stack, backend. If there's any type of projects you want, it's probably there, and to give you inspiration. It has acceptance criteria, background, all this type of thing. Again, I'll post it in afterwards. That's not, I've just thought about that on the spot. Show projects. That's really great. Simple as that. And last but not least, but ask them questions too. Interviews are a two-way street, especially in tech, right? Here's as much as an interview is you seeing if you're fit for them. An interview process is also if you're a good fit, if they're a good fit for you. Sorry, the company culture might not align with who you are as a person, but it might align with someone else in the cohort. That's it. Ask questions. That's the only way you're going to find out. 2 examples, and 2 of my favorite ones. I normally ask 3 questions, by the way, in my interviews, but 2 questions I ask, generally speaking, is what does a normal day look like as a developer? But tailor your question specifically, right? So if you're a front-end developer, say, what does a normal day for a front-end developer look like in XYZ company? Simple. You then get an idea of what a normal day looks like, and you probably get a better life of developer thing than I just said about 10 minutes ago. Simple. The second question you can take it away, is what is being the best in this role look like at this company? So at ITV, when I interviewed them, I said to my boss, what is the best developer for this role? And he was like, whoa. He was almost taken back by it. Because you need to know what you're trying to, become. Like you need to know what developer they're getting. You need to know what they want. And if you get the job, you then know what they want. You've got time to prepare yourself becoming that almost encompassed developer. And then the third one's generally speaking a funny question. So again, when I interviewed ITV, I said, "What's your favorite ITV show?" I wouldn't not necessarily everyone can do that, but that's always my third question. I was too serious and one like that. But here, honestly, other than that, my biggest tip in interview tips is be you. You are unique. Don't be something you're not in interview process, please. Be yourself. Tech is a great industry. Everyone is learning. Show yourself off. Show how cool your knowledge is. Be you. Don't try and be something else that you are not. Very, 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 very simple. All right, let me just go over them again, okay? Research the company. Know your basics. Prepare for problem solving. Show some projects. Ask questions. And obviously, the biggest tip, be you. I don't know why this emoji's here. Maybe it's because you're all great. You're all junior developers. You're great. You're all fire. But last but not least, that's the kind of last thing. I just have 6 people on Twitter I think you should follow if you're junior developers. These are all class people who are top of their fields and know what they're talking about. Again, feel free to show a screenshot of that, but 3 people to really point out here. I've mentioned one already, 2 already actually. It's Wes Boss and Scott Tolinsky. They host that Syntax FM podcast that I mentioned above about Imposter Syndrome. Now that podcast is full of absolute gold nuggets, left, right, and center, and they know what they're talking about. So all of these are Twitter handles, by the way. So if you want to follow people, go follow them. I've put my name there because why not? I'm nowhere near as good as these 5 people, but I've put my name there anyway. And the only other person to call out bluntly is Fireship Dev. Some of you probably have used them already. They're a YouTube channel. He's a developer who has a YouTube channel who gives like 100-second roundups of programming languages, new frameworks, all this type of stuff. That's it. That's the general resource. And before I finish, I will leave you with this because I can imagine as developers you've already felt this. How fun is it when you spend an hour fixing a bug and then you get another bug? Look, programming is fun, everyone. Just keep doing what you're doing. I honestly champion every single one of you as junior developers. You are great, and you're really joining an industry that is fantastic. And I am cheering you all on. And I hope one day you can all overtake me as developers because I've lost my hairline because I'm a developer. That's a joke. But yeah, that's it for me. After this, Alice will come back on and we've got some questions and answers if anyone has any questions. But yeah, that's me. I'm going to leave it on that nice little slide.
Thanks so much, Charlie. That was great. Super insightful and hopefully really helpful for some people. So if anyone does have any questions for Charlie, feel free to ask away. We'll just stay on for a couple of minutes just to do a quick Q&A. But this video has been recorded, so if you do want to catch up on it, it is available on our YouTube channel. So it's Command Shift on YouTube. It's pretty straightforward. Charlie's in our Slack community as well, so I'm sure if you ever wanted to ask him any questions about anything, he'd be more than happy to help there. But yeah, just see if anyone does have any questions.
No questions, I'm going to leave that on the screen.
Yeah.
Follow those 5 people. Seriously.
Normally, I ask people questions and then they type them up and then I close I think nobody has any, so I close it.
Well, even if you get some questions after, like Alice said, I'm in the Slack community. Chuck them over.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, if no one has anything to say, we will leave it there. But that was great, Charlie. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. And I can't wait to see what you're going to get up to next.
Bye, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Bye.